It was a weight off everyone's mind after coming through the trial against Burleigh with a win and without major injury concerns. Ex-Bear Dave Fairley made the most of his night's debut, scoring a try, but admits there is plenty of room for improvement.
It was a little bit difficult, not too bad. Obviously a lot of the big name players were missing, so it was a good opportunity for the forwards to try and build a few combinations.
One of the best on field, he knows he'll have to maintain that form with competition for starting spots in the pack only getting tougher.
And that's the way it should be, everyone's got to stay on their toes, and front row, second row, is, as you say, there's plenty of competition, but it's healthy, so that's a good thing.
One of those pressuring, Steve Simpson, the big back rower, showing early signs he's in for a big season.
A little bit of pressure sort of being the best out of everyone, so I just keep going at it, I suppose.
But there is mounting concern over Andrew Johns. The halfback is still not running at full pace due to that groin injury that's seen him require surgery twice in the last few months. With the season kick-off in less than 2 weeks, the chances of him playing against the Northern Eagles are looking slimmer by the day.
It's been a cooler than normal summer in the Hunter Valley, allowing grapes to mature and ripen slowly, developing strong flavours in the process. But last week's hot snap accelerated the ripening process, forcing growers to begin picking.
Well, we had a period of 5 days there where it reached 40 to 42 degrees and very dry heat. And after all the cool weather and the rain we've had right through the growing season, that was just topped off the ripening very quickly. So it's great to get started.
Machines roared into action at most Hunter vineyards today. Here at McWilliams Mount Pleasant, the harvesters will be backed up by 80 hand pickers starting tomorrow. Pinot Noir is the first variety to be picked, and the wine made by most of these grapes is bound for Japan.
We make sparkling red wine with this, what we used to call sparkling Burgundy in the old days, but sparkling Pinot Noir. And we've got a market now in Japan for the wedding market.
Picking will continue in the vines for the next 6 to 8 weeks. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Like other torchbearers, Dan Proud had to keep his selection secret for the last month. Today his name was there for all to see. Dan will be 12 by the time the relay is run, the minimum age for participants. He was motivated to apply by his father's terminal cancer.
I wanted to do something special for my dad, and we were thinking of doing something, and then nomination sheets for Run With being the torchbearer came home.
While it'll be all new for Dan, the relay will bring back plenty of memories for Maitland's John Lane. The 60-year-old is one of the 1956 runners who will carry the flame again, and he's said to be over the moon. He might just have a familiar face to hand the torch to. Rugby league legend Paul Harrigan, one local identity named in the relay.
To be able to carry that torch through my hometown Newcastle is fantastic.
Also lining up, Lake Macquarie's champion runner and stair climber, Angela Sheehan.
I'm hoping to see a lot of people out there and my family out along the foreshore.
And the international community won't get to see this in the relay. Hugh Nossiter has been chosen as a torchbearer, but due to strict clothing regulations, he won't be running as his alias, Super Hubert.
You wear a white shirt, which they supply you, and white shorts and Olympic socks. And it's just such an absolute honour. I'll probably be crying when I'm running.
Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
A couple of trucks were all that were out on the runway at Rutherford. With planes grounded, tarmac maintenance is easy. Pilots would rather get started on cleaning their fuel systems, but still they haven't been able to test for contaminants.
Well, I understand these test kits are coming, but we don't know when, and we're just waiting today to find out if they're going to arrive this week or tomorrow or the next day. We're not quite sure. And we won't know, and we can't do nothing to get these test kits.
Mobil says every operator in Australia should have access to the latest test kits by the end of the week, but the extra delay is hurting businesses around the country that haven't flown since Christmas Eve. Rutherford Aerodrome is managing better than many businesses. It hasn't had to sack anyone yet.
We have 10 aircraft are all grounded, and of course costs will go, insurance and wages and all those sort of things keeps going. At this stage we haven't laid anybody off, but we've had asked some of our staff to have a holiday.
Australia Day 2000, along the shores of the lakes and in the valley, meant getting out and getting down. A day to pay tribute to the land we call our own. From the traditional parade along the streets of Maitland to the gateway of the Hunter Vineyard, showing its pride, the people of Cessnock hosting a ceremony to honour the eldest and youngest citizen. And speaking of a new generation of Australians, it seems some youngsters in the valley may need some lessons on what to wear on Australia Day. One boy mixing up his own country with one across the Tasman. Whoever said history never repeats should have been at Belmont Golf Course this morning. After their first 9 holes, Q golfer John Sutherland was leading on 4 under, 1 shot ahead of West Australian Scott Strange. The two finished in the same positions last year. It was a credible start, considering the tough conditions.
The worst thing has been just a few squally winds and quite a bit of rain, and it's played a bit of havoc with some of the distance mainly on their shots.
It's the 43rd time the International Amateur Championships have been held, and as the name suggests, it attracts top golfers from across the globe. Last year's field included Australian Open winner Aaron Baddeley and PGA winner Brett Rumford. This time around, it's just as classy.
Brad Lamb's already won a professional golf tournament. Carl Brooking came 7th in the same tournament. Scott Strange came 11th in the Australian Open, so a lot of these people could just step straight into the professional ranks without a problem.
And while the tournament carries no prize money, there's still plenty to play for, with the best 4 Australians going a step closer to qualifying for top international events. Colin Baldwin, NBN News.
At Rutherford, the sign says it all. Yesterday, the PM wasn't quite ready to supply it.
It's very difficult for an industry like textiles for Australian companies to remain completely competitive with low-wage countries. I mean, that's just an economic reality.
Sacked workers waiting for wages, leave pay and $11 million in redundancy entitlements weren't happy with that.
Bloody pig. That's my opinion of him. I don't think he really cares about what's going on down here, to tell you the truth.
As unemployed fathers explained the situation to their children, they heard Mr Howard had changed his tune.
I am very sorry for what has happened to these workers, and we're doing all that we can to ensure that they get their entitlements.
Tariff reduction programs started under Labor in the 80s, but ALP politicians who arrived to support the picket claimed National Textiles has been let down by the Howard administration.
For the federal government to pull out the $2.5 million in import replacement or tariff replacement costs, that was the wrong time for this industry.
There was real support from an unexpected quarter. A businessman donated $5,000 to the picket and made an impassioned plea for Hunter Valley Enterprises to employ one sacked worker each.
If 350 employers could come forward, everybody's got a job and we're all back on track.
Workers received final pay packets today, but that didn't inspire confidence. It was only late this afternoon that National Textiles financier agreed to release $181,000 required to cover the final week's wages. How much redundancy pay each worker receives will depend on the creditors' meeting tomorrow and the government's rescue package. David McElwain, NBN News.
The NRL 14-team competition will start next week with a big bang on Saturday night with a double-header to kick things off at Stadium Australia. There are no trials this weekend. All teams are resting and going over last-minute preparations. Predicting a top 8 is very hard at this stage because trials were near impossible to accurately gauge teams' form. But from what I've seen, the top 8 should look like this. Starting from the top 4 in no particular order, Brisbane will be hungry after last year. They were one of the few teams that trialled a full-grade squad. And with the likes of Harvey Howard, the return of Kerrod Walters and Ben Ikin, in my mind, will make them the team to beat. The player in this team to watch is new signing Ben Ikin. Melbourne, after winning the World Cup challenge against English glamour club St Helens in tremendous fashion, you would think that the Storm are well and truly over the loss of Glenn Lazarus and Tawari Nikau. The Storm is ready to back up their form from 1999, and with the return of Scott Hill and giant killer Brett Camorley, they'll be up there once again. This season, I think Matt Rua is a young bloke to watch from that side. St George Illawarra are also looking good despite losing Paul McGregor, Rod Wishart, Mark Coyne, to name a few. But they still have 14 players with grand final experience. Keep an eye out for Lee Hookey. The Newcastle Knights. Add Dave Fairley, Ben Kennedy and Matt Parsons to an already strong forward pack and you have the forward depth to win a premiership. An injury-free season from numbers 1 to 7 is essential for the Knights' chances. The player to look out for is Steve Simpson. Now the bottom 4. Canterbury, no major changes. They're a strong, consistent club. Ricky Stewart will be leading the way, but with Craig Polomana back from a year of injury, he'll be the one to watch out for. The Sharks, also no major changes to this side. The neck injury to Jason Stevens will have a large bearing on the team's chances. A young bloke to look out for, winger Colin Best. The Northern Eagles, 2 great clubs merged together. They have an exciting new coach in Peter Sharp and a fresh beginning. Predict a slow start of the season, but they'll reach the top 8. Teenager Mark O'Mealy is the one to look out for. Western Tigers, with a new start like the Northern Eagles, Junior Pearce will have his team super fit as per usual, and I also think this team will band together quite well and get a great start to the season. Much like the club, a player looking for a new start is Owen Craigie. He'll go well this year. While personally I think it should be the top 6, that's my top 8 for season 2000. And don't forget, NBN will show every night's game each week. I'm Paul Harrigan for NBN News.
It was a bold gamble that paid handsome dividends for the state administrators of lawn bowls. The Premier League concept was an instant hit, and it's only got stronger with international players being signed up by clubs for the season that starts tomorrow.
New Zealand's best player, Rowan Bracey's playing with the entrance, and a chap called David Hamley that's English international that's playing for Belrose, and we play them on Sunday, yeah.
McCabe's Charlestown team went through final preparations today, but after they were beaten finalists last year, there are no prizes for guessing where they want to finish this time around.
We'd like to go one better, of course, beating the grand final last year, and we've got a pretty competent side, and I think we'll go very well.
All 4 Newcastle teams play at home this weekend. Meanwhile, the Country Colts cricket team will be selected this weekend, with the Northern New South Wales under-20 side taking on their southern counterparts in Newcastle. The 2-day match is at the #1 sports ground. And the National Junior Sailboard titles are being held at Sunshine on Lake Macquarie this weekend, with Australian number 3 and local boy Michael Lancy tipped to feature in the top placings.
The shape of things to come for students who've just finished school. In a day and age where qualification is more important than anything else, the lineup in front of the Hunter Institute, an indication that not only will it take good grades, but good legs to get ahead. Students waiting to enrol for the first year of the new millennium. And for those at the other end of the scale starting out, they could be at Heaton School at Birmingham Gardens. Construction workers together with teachers and other staff doing their best to get the school ready for the influx of New Year students. Heaton was gutted by fire in December, leaving doubt students would be able to get into classes by the end of January. However, school principal Brendan Daly confident the efforts of parents and teachers will have students knuckling down to work on Monday morning. Helped in no small way by the efforts of fundraisers like the Tamago Periodic Detention Centre out at Williamtown that handed over $1,000 today, money raised by the sale of sweets. There to witness the handover, the Austin brothers, youngest Jaden getting ready for that first day in grade 1. That may be why the shorelines were deserted today. Then again, it hasn't been a great month for summer holidays. Roll on February. Matt Carden, NBN News.
It's becoming one tough road trip for the Newcastle Breakers. On the back of the 2-0 loss to Adelaide, the team must now front up against the Premier South Melbourne, a team back in form with a win against Sydney Olympic. Hoping this doesn't become a doomsday double, Newcastle could be without Brad Widgerek, who injured his ankle, and the club has placed Damien Smith on standby to fly down for Sunday's game. A final decision won't be made until tomorrow morning. Newcastle Night Stars Matthew Johns and Robbie O'Davis were in hospital today, but it wasn't for treatment, rather to help sick children. With the NRL season launched tonight, league officials tried to help some younger fans by bringing the game to them, and they were quick learners. One keen to show Matthew Johns his own style of a hospital pass. The Knights launched their season in a little over half an hour at Spears Point.
The embroidered symbol on the sail is synonymous with cunning, and to make the most of conditions today, that's exactly what competitors needed to be, to edge out their opponents for round 2 of the Taipan State Championships.
We've got two either world champion or ex-world champions. There's Chris Cairns, who's an ex-Tornado world champion, and there's Brad Sumner out there, who's a dual Hobie 18 world champion competing.
With a wind speed of over 10 knots and very little chop on the water, conditions were ideal for some quick laps around the course.
We've probably got about 12 knots of breeze here coming from the southeast. These guys are flying holes both upwind and down. So yeah, it'd be a joy to be out there.
17 competitors were on the water today, but it was the favourites like defending champ Chris Cairns and the round 1 leader Daniel Van Kerkhoff who headed the 16-foot crafts. But Van Kerkhoff came unstuck in the first race today, giving Cairns a race 1 lead needed for a shot at defending his title. It's not over, however. Competitors are allowed to drop their 2 worst times from the 8 races, the final 2 of which will be held tomorrow afternoon. Adam Harper, NBN News.
The Super Sedans hadn't raced at the Tomago circuit since New Year's Day, and it showed with Daryl Farrelly getting all tied up with John Pine.
Tears the front bonnet right off John Pine's number 9 car.
The heat had barely restarted when Pine was in the thick of things once again. If he needed any more proof that this wasn't to be his night, he only needed to wait for the second lap of the final, where not only John but his son Luke crashed with 2 other drivers. One man who stayed well clear of trouble was Wayne Randell, who beat home Lismore lady speedster Tanya Smith with Singleton's John Smith home third.
It's probably the last thing you'd expect to see outside your school on day one. The trolls from the popular stage show The Hobbit, stopping traffic and kids in their tracks down at the junction. And whoever said don't feed the animals didn't tell these kids. Across the Hunter, parents utilising any form of transport possible to get the children off to school. From a bike to this multi-level pusher, it was a matter of just getting them there. Some students lucky to be in class at all. Heaton School at Birmingham Gardens gutted by fire in early December, but back in business today with a number of demountables. Students can expect more permanent digs later in the year. Of course, we couldn't let this back-to-school yarn end without the last word going to the trolls.
Plans to link Stewart Avenue with Hannell Street have been on the drawing board with Council since the 1950s, but today saw those plans finally become a reality. Council has come up with a two-stage plan that will create a smoother flow of traffic through parts of town and reduce CBD congestion. In particular, the road will bypass the hazardous dogleg bend at Bank Corner.
Of course, this linkage is going through. It will be much better traffic circulation as far as Newcastle is concerned. It cuts out that very difficult bend around the Bank Corner, and I think that it's good to see this proceeding.
Despite the $5 million upgrade, some things won't change.
I think back in the 50s there was the idea of building a bridge, I think, which started at Parry Street and came down in Hannell Street, and that was obviously something that was never going to occur.
Stage 1 will see a new level crossing connect Hannell Street to Stewart Avenue and should be finished by June. Stage 2 by the end of the year. The new roads will also free up waterfront land, which honeysuckle developers and council plan to divide for commercial and residential use. Adam Harper, NBN News.
The Breakers returned today without any points from their two-match road trip. A 2-0 loss to Adelaide repeated last night, going down to South Melbourne by the same margin.
Bottom line is we are disappointed.
It was always going to be a real battle for competition points at South Melbourne's home ground. Few clubs have beaten them at Bob Jane in recent seasons, and the Premier showed why they're one of the most feared in the competition, looking very different to the one beaten 6-0 just a week ago. But it did take them 65 minutes to break through Newcastle's defence, and it came through a Goran Lozanowski missile. One was never enough. The home side was hungry for more. Todd McManus is only one more yellow card away from an automatic suspension, joining 3 other Breakers on the same predicament after this. While South Melbourne lobbed another on the score sheet, this during extra time to wrap up a 2-0 win.
Realistically, South Melbourne have lost once at home in maybe 2.5 years, so while it's not a great surprise, again it was a disappointment. But
they get a chance to make up for that feeling on Wednesday night when they host the Premiers at Breakers Stadium. Changes are expected in the Newcastle lineup.
The 51 students at Mount Canwary Public School couldn't wait to start lessons today. Their new classroom arrived just in time for the start of the new school year, the result of a spirited campaign by parents and staff targeting the Department of School Education.
There was administration going on in the classroom because we had to do photocopying and things like that in the classroom. Children have to answer phones and they have to do the secretarial work from time to time. Now at least I have a storeroom for a principal's office and my clerical assistant has her own space.
The old classroom will now become the library, staff and computer rooms, with Principal Cronin settling into her new storeroom.
In the classrooms it was really squishy around the computers and everything because we had to squeeze past like everyone, so yeah, it's really good with all the space now.
The department has promised an even larger classroom after the Olympics. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Union members turned up the heat at BHP's Pilbara mine 2 weeks ago, angry about workplace changes in the company's iron ore division. The federal court's decision to stop the big Australian offering any more workplace agreements has induced a cooling-off period. The union's getting the breather they were after.
We went to the federal court and said we smell a rat. We believe that BHP are discriminating against a section of their employees in the Pilbara.
The groundbreaking decision means contracts are banned until a trial is carried out into claims BHP has breached the Workplace Relations Act. Justice Peter Gray suggested there was evidence of discrimination, denting the big Australians' plans for sweeping reforms.
We set out to offer to our employees a win-win opportunity. They had the opportunity to improve their rewards by working in a different way with the company.
The decision could have big ramifications for other businesses, widening the scope for unions to challenge workplace reforms.
What I think it means is that businesses can no longer assume that they can go about offering individual contracts as a means of deunionising a workforce.
BHP has vowed to vigorously fight the charges. Vanessa Spark, NBN News.
$20,000 is a lot of jobs, and I'm very, very pleased that we seem to be tending in the right direction.
Darren Albert's run of pre-season injuries continues, an ankle injury restricting him to mostly pool sessions this week, and his inclusion in the team to play the Northern Eagles won't be confirmed until game day.
It's on the mend, and it's just a matter of time now.
The time has come for Tamana Tahu. After an indifferent debut last season, the teenager is back in the top squad.
I must say, he looks good in training, and the opposed stuff we're doing looks very, very good and sharp, so we're going with him.
Given both injury and form, the backline virtually picked itself, with Lenny Beckett to start if Albert is forced to withdraw. It was the forward selection that provided most interest, with Clinton O'Brien considered the unlucky player to miss out, his omission highlighting the fact that on paper this pack is one of the best in the league.
The strength and depth and the quality of the players is as good as I've seen representing the Newcastle team since our inception.
If there is any worry this season, it's depth in the backs, with Andrew Johns still not 100%.
That's my only concern, that his preparation's been less than wonderful.
The impact of the collision between this stolen Honda and semi-trailer was an extremely violent one. The truck driver was lucky enough to survive the crash on the Pacific Highway at Bulahdelah last July, which killed 2 passengers in the prelude instantly. Amazingly too, the sedan driver escaped unharmed, but not from police. They caught him a short time later in nearby bushland, charging him with 2 counts of dangerous driving, occasioning death and drink driving. He was also charged with possessing stolen property, which linked him to 2 robberies earlier that day on the Central Coast. In Newcastle District Court today, Paul Drummond pleaded guilty to the charges. The 22-year-old was remanded in custody and will be sentenced early next month. Helen Kapelos, NBN News.